They view any romantic relationship as a means to just get sex. It's sad. True. Well, that's what they do, right? Which is incredibly fucking sexual. Like, very hypersexual. It's like why people like Matt Walsh say that, like, being, for instance, heteroromantic asexual. Meaning that you're asexual and that you feel little to no sexual attraction to anybody. However, you do feel romantic inclinations and attraction to, in this case, people of a gender identity that you do not identify as. Heteroromantic. Because Matt Walsh has literally said that he thinks that you cannot have sexuality without romance. Like, they're intrinsically tied, which is really weird. Like, the idea that you can't have a romantic interest with someone without also having a sexual interest or vice versa leads to a lot of really weird conclusions, and it's like a really weird sexualization of romance. And the reason why they have to believe this is because they believe that sex is for procreation. They believe that the only reason anybody should be having sex is to have children. So you're incredibly sexualizing romance, which is a thing that does not have to be sexual at all. Obviously, it leads to a lot of sexual activity a lot of the time for most people, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's very strange. Gay chat lol. Jasmine said gay is good. This person respond gay equals hell. It would seem that this person is not very mentally well, chat. You should be careful. They are suffering currently. Imagine thinking hell exists. Like, you literally have to be delusional to think that hell is a real place. The idea that anybody who would actually believe that hell is real, like, I don't know how we take these people seriously. I'm not even trying to be like a lay Reddit tip milady atheist. The only reason why this concept is a thing at all, and like people aren't immediately laughed at for being like, oh yeah, hell, a place where people go to experience eternal damnation for whatever this book I read says is a sin, which I have no proof exists at all, that I use to traumatize children into behaving in whatever way I think they should. That place is actually real. The idea that you're not immediately laughed at for saying that is because religion has been such a mainstay of human experience for as long as we've had written history, right? That's the only reason. It's because it's a tradition that people stick to. Like, the idea that you come into some public place and be like, oh yeah, if you eat meat on this day, you're going to hell. It's like, are you hearing yourself, man? I live on Earth. What is this hell place? You talking about Ohio? You talking about Indiana? What a joke. Hell's a really cool fictional place to set stories in. That's true. The only good thing that this conception of hell has ever spawned is like games like Doom, where you go around killing demons. That's kind of cool. Feel like society coddles religious people way too much? Oh yeah. Society for a long time has just played into the delusions of religious people. It's time for it to stop. I'm not anti-theist in that I don't think people should be allowed to be religious. I would never have that take. You can fucking believe whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody. Though there's an argument to be made that a lot of religious beliefs are actually hurtful to people. But anyway, you can believe in whatever the fuck you want. However, religious people should be seen in the same way that K-pop stans are seen by society, right? I think that is what we need to do. It's like, okay, well, there's these people that are really fanatical about a certain person or a group or idea, and like, we tolerate them because, like, for the most part, they're not hurting anybody. They're a little weird. It's kind of shameful what they're doing, but I mean, it is what it is. They go about their day. But some of them, they go way too far, and they start harassing people. They start trying to infiltrate the government and get people to pass laws to institute their beliefs onto other people that don't believe them. That's not good. Now, luckily, K-pop stans are actually better than religious people because, as far as I'm aware, K-pop stans have not infiltrated the government yet to make a national stan Jimin Day or something, right? They're actually better than the religious folks. But give it time. Like, it should be like, oh, okay, you're a K-pop stan? Well, that's really cringy. But okay, I guess. As long as that's as far as it goes. K-pop stans, what if they could? Maybe. Imagine going up to some proselytizing preacher and saying, stop the dick riding, bro. The dick eating for Christianity is crazy, man. Holy. Nah, the dick eating for Jesus is crazy. That's stupid. Religion doesn't teach consent. Well, a lot of conservatives generally, who also happen to be religious, base a lot of their beliefs around like compelled sex. Like, they're not asexual before marriage. They're kind of the opposite. Like, conservatives are very sexual people. It's weird, man. Because, like, they base their entire lives around, like, forming a family, having sex to procreate. Like, conservatives are very sexual people, especially before marriage. Like, they're so sexualized that they think they have the capacity to tell people, to tell consenting adults what kind of sex and what kind of sex with who they can have. Like, that's compelled sex. If you're going to tell two consenting adult men that they're not allowed to have gay sex, but they are allowed to have heterosexual sex, so long as they're married, you're trying to compel sex just in a direction you find more comfortable. It's very strange. Whereas queer people are never like, you have to have gay sex right now. That's never happening. But conservatives are always like, you gotta get married and have heterosexual sex right now. It's so strange. You see that anti-trans radio host that got caught having liked thousands of trans porn on Twitter before hosting his anti-trans show? A transphobe, specifically a transphobic man, I would imagine, enjoying trans porn? No way. That's crazy. I've never heard of that before. I find it funny whenever considered as the whole queer equals nothing but sex thing. It's gotta be projection. Well, it is. For a lot of these right-wingers and conservatives, especially religious people, literally, it seems like the only thing stopping them from acting out on their very clearly hypersexual ideas is their religion and like their fear of hell or something. It seems like the tiniest thread that they're holding on to stop them from going out and like having all kinds of sex. And also like the law. Like, there are a lot of conservative religious men specifically that have like literally said they would do heinous shit if it wasn't for the fact that there were laws in place. Because conservatives and right-wingers seem to tie their morality to the law, it's like, okay, well, if murder wasn't illegal, is that like the only reason you're not going to do it? For a lot of them, it seems like it. I wish I had like examples of this currently, but this is a phenomenon that I've recognized. They view any romantic relationship as a means to just get sex. It's sad. True. Well, that's what they do, right? Which is incredibly fucking sexual. Like, very hypersexual. It's like what's weird about why people like Matt Walsh say that, like, being, for instance, heteroromantic asexual. Meaning that you're asexual and that you feel little to no sexual attraction to anybody. You know, gay, straight, whatever, anybody. Little to none. However, you do feel romantic inclinations and attraction to, in this case, people of a gender identity that you do not identify as. Heteroromantic. Because Matt Walsh has literally said that he thinks that you cannot have sexuality without romance. Like, they're intrinsically tied, which is really weird. Like, the idea that you can't have a romantic interest with someone without also having a sexual interest or vice versa leads to a lot of really weird conclusions, and it's like a really weird sexualization of romance. And the reason why they have to believe this is because they believe that sex is for procreation. They believe that the only reason anybody should be having sex is to have children. So you're incredibly sexualizing romance, which is a thing that does not have to be sexual at all. Obviously, it leads to a lot of sexual activity a lot of the time for most people, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's very strange. Why would you have sex if you don't want a baby? To strengthen any kind of romantic, physical, social bonds with your partner, for fun, pleasure, also to procreate if that's what you're into, but you stipulated not that. For people that are not aromantic and not asexual, there's often a lot of overlap between sexuality and romance. Like, having sex with your partner can often strengthen the social bonds you have with them that will make your romantic engagements with them feel more fulfilling, right? So, for instance, having a really romantic night out with your girlfriend, and then you go home and you end up having sex or whatever. That's like a memory and like an experience you have with a person that can make the future romantic things you do more interesting, engaging, fulfilling, and vice versa. The social bonds that you might form and the experiences that you might have having sex with your partner can make the romantic things you do, which are detached from sex, more engaging as well, more fulfilling. Also, you can just do it for fun with like people that you don't have a romantic engagement with. Add physiological benefits? Sure. Well, it's also possible. Yeah, I mean, there's also like the exercise aspect of it. I don't think very many people have sex with that in mind. It just seems to like be a part of it. But I mean, if there are some out there, I mean, fuck it, why not? That's also true, Corian. Some people have sex for a variety of the things we've already talked about, but also to get better at it. Because, you know, contrary to popular belief, no conservatives know how to pleasure anybody. The women, the men, anything in between in the conservative sphere, none of them know how to actually get their partners off. It's just that it's easier to get a man off in a lot of these instances. So, you know, just because the woman in this case is there, whatever. There are, contrary to, you know, that conception of sex, there are people out there that do want to provide as much pleasure as possible for their partner when having sex. I know that might be crazy, but there are some, for instance, men out there that understand where the clit is. And a lot of the time, getting better at doing that involves doing it and essentially practicing. It's actually not that much harder to get a woman off. Well, we're talking about people who don't know how to have sex and are repressed about it. We're talking about conservatives. So in that context, it's going to be easier to get a man off than a woman because it requires... So this is the thing. It's not really a measure of difficulty. It's a measure of if they know how to do it or not. The difficulty involved there is the knowledge that they don't have, right? So to get a person with a penis off, very simple. Bada bing, bada boom, you know? Now, obviously, it's not always that straight up. Some people require something more, blah, blah, blah. But generally speaking, there you go. Person with a vagina, however, it requires different things because, you know, you're not doing that. It's mechanically different, which is a problem that a lot of people with penises in that engagement have. Because, so for a person with a penis, so let's say we're talking about a man and a woman. The man has a penis, the woman has a vagina. Crazy, I know. The person with the penis is used to getting off just by jerking it, right? So then when they think about sex and they think about getting off, which is your right to do, you know, when you're having sex with somebody, you should also be trying to do that for them too. They put the penis in and they essentially do this thing, but with the vagine, right? And then that's how they get off. And they assume that that's how it works for the woman in that case as well. But it's not necessarily. Like penetrative sex, just like simply doing that is not going to be enough for a lot of people with vaginas. Or even like if you're doing anal, right? Oftentimes it'll require a little bit more than that, which is where, you know, like you're trying to like get good with your stroke game, understanding what your partner likes, talking to your partner about what they like, understanding where the clitoris is, right? So I think the problem is for a lot of people with penises, they understand how to get themselves off because they've been doing it for a while, theoretically, for themselves. And that's the only understanding that they have about how human beings, generally speaking, get off is themselves. They have a penis, so that's how they do it. So then when they go to try to provide that experience for other people when they're having sex with them, that's what they try to do, and it doesn't usually do enough to work because it's mechanically different. Surely some of you understand what I'm saying. Also, porn doesn't really, at least, you know, most of the porn that people are going to be looking at is not going to teach people how to have sex. Because the kind of sex you'll usually be seeing in porn is dramatized. It's played up for the camera. Now, it's not to say that there isn't porn out there that is like more sensual and yada, 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 but, you know, you have to do a little bit of digging to find it. So, like, this is why communication is key. You need to be taught to communicate with your partner because it helps in a variety of ways. Know what people like, know what people don't like, know what people are not okay with, you know? Anyway. Well, that's what I mean by compelled sex, Bad Jasmine. If you're going to tell, like, two gay men that they can't have gay sex with each other, but it is okay for them to have heterosexual sex with women if they were to do it, like, one of the men goes with one woman, one of the men goes with the other woman, and they end up having heterosexual sex, and that's okay, that is a kind of compelled sex. They're saying, oh, you can't have this kind of sex, but we want you to have that kind of sex for the purposes of procreation. You know, with all this talk about declining birth rates and whatever. That is compelled sex, which is weird. Because I don't know who else is trying to compel people to have sex. They always talk about how the left and the LGBTQ, the alphabet mafia, are trying to force everybody to have gay sex, but that's not actually true. We're just saying that if there are people that are consenting that want to have gay sex, they can. We're not going to try to make it illegal like the right wants to do. We're not going to make it morally negative like the right wants to do. We're just saying it's okay to do it. That's it. Meanwhile, the right's like, you have to have sex, you have to have children, it has to be heterosexual, you have to sign a contract with the government before you're allowed to have sex. That's certainly different. I know a lot of hetero and Christian couples that are opting out of having kids. People are getting past the idea that your number one goal is to have kids. Yeah. Also, at least in the United States of America, unless you're like sufficiently well off financially, it's kind of not a good idea to have kids currently. Like that's what's really funny about all this. Like Elon Musk is like, oh my god, the birth rates. All like the white supremacists are like, oh my god, the birth rates, specifically of white people, white children. This is such a problem. It's like, well, if you actually had an understanding about, you know, class in addition to race and all this other kind of shit, you'd understand that a lot of people on the lower end of the class spectrum that are very poor aren't going to be trying to have kids. A lot of the time when they do, it's accidental, and then they get fucked over for, you know, that being the case. They're not having kids because they don't have the money to, because it's expensive to have kids in America. If you were to make it less expensive to live, more people would end up having kids, right? If you were to make it less expensive to have kids, more people would be likely to make the decision to do so. And you'd get better outcomes for those kids, which would produce better outcomes for society when they, you know, grow into being participating members of society. But they don't want to think about it that way because they want more rich people to make more money and more poor people to stay poor so that they can abuse them for their labor. In summation, conservatives are weird about sex. They are very much in favor of compelled sex. They are very hypersexual, or hypersexual, I should say. And it manifests in a lot of really negative ways. If queer people, the alphabet mafia, who's the godfather? Joe Biden. That's what, like, when Chet Hanks said, big boss man Biden, that's what he meant. Because he's the godfather of the alphabet mafia. Don Biden. My fellow Americans, we need to protect our precious American boy motors. I have signed an executive order to provide free hoodies to our sweet, sweet boy motors. God bless America. This video's gonna call it as somehow, some way, no quid pro quo, no collusion, believe me. Editor of the stream and close associate of the CWC broadcast and YouTube archive, High Progressive. Put confetti. Thanks so much for all that you do to keep the channel running in an exquisite capacity, because if I was left to my own, these videos would not be nearly as enjoyable to watch to all of you. So everybody say thank you, High Progressive, in the YouTube comments. Also, if you enjoyed the content, leave a like. If you'd like, subscribe to the channel. All notifications on me, hit the bell. I'd appreciate that. And now I've done things out of order, and I don't know what to do at this point, so I'm just going to sit here. And I'm not going to end the conure call. And there's nothing you can do.